Hi, everyone. My name is Sloan Anderson. I am a fourth-year PhD candidate in the Family Social Science program, and I am here to talk to you today a little bit about your advisor-advisee relationship and this workbook that I developed last year to sort of help people navigate this relationship. So your advising relationship is probably the most important sort of crucial puzzle piece in your PhD program. It's also extremely unique. You will not find this type of relationship really kind of anywhere else outside of academia. Your advisor is serving as your academic and career advisor. They're your mentor professionally and personally, really. They're your advocate. Often they're your boss as well if you're doing an RA or a TA with them. And they often function as a co-author as well because you'll be writing together. So it's a very complex relationship with a lot of layers, and it's important to really be proactive and work hard at maintaining that relationship so that you can both get the most out of it. So I'm just going to jump in and look at the workbook. The first page is this list of responsibilities and who you each think should be primarily responsible for each of these items. So it includes things like course planning, advising meeting planning, tracking your progress in the program, emotional support, networking, etc., etc. So the way that you use this tool is you will go through and you each separately fill out the form with what you think the number should be from 1 to 5 in terms of who is responsible primarily for each of these tasks. So on this first one, if you circle 1, it means you think that your advisor should be suggesting, or you want your advisor to suggest and approve coursework for you each semester. If you circle a 5, you think that you should be the one who solely determines your coursework and that it's not really your advisor's responsibility. So going through that, you then come together and compare your numbers and sort of decide on what you're going to go with in terms of practice. This is something that you can and should revisit and modify throughout your time in the program, fairly regularly. Because when you start, you might really need your advisor to take the lead on advising meetings. But then as you go on, maybe after one semester, you're the one who knows what you need to talk about. So maybe, it needs to be modified to represent the fact that you're the one who's showing up with an itemized list. The second page is looking at writing support and what type of support and to what extent you can expect from your advisor on each of these topics or each of these types of writing. So there's coursework, master's thesis, critical review. There's also other sort of core pieces of writing that you could add to this list, like your dissertation proposal or your theory of change paper if you're a CFT student. So feel free to add more categories to this piece. But it's important, again, to go through to just sort of make sure that you're matching expectations with your advisor so that you know sort of what they generally will do. Some advisors have nothing to do with your coursework, and others are totally interested in being hands-on and helping you, work through, developing papers and stuff like that. So that's what that is. This third page is the important questions to ask your advisor page. So most of these are things that I asked my advisor in my interview before I even was offered, a place in the program. I think that these are the types of questions that really help you to figure out how compatible you really are with your advisor, because we're not necessarily asking about things like expectations that can be changed. We're talking about your advisor's personal preferences as an advisor, and as a boss, and that kind of thing. So you're looking at, you know, how do they prefer to communicate? Do they like to be reminded of upcoming deadlines? Learn about their thoughts on authorship. How do they assign authorship? When does that happen? You know, how do you determine author order? That kind of thing. What type of feedback do they typically provide? Are they a really meticulous editor, or are they more like read the whole thing and then leave a few comments after? If you're used to someone who gives meticulous line-by-line feedback on APA formatting and all of this stuff, and then your advisor turns out to be a person who leaves one big conceptual comment at the end, and not anywhere else, that can be really frustrating, and you might feel neglected or something, but it could just be the way that person, you know, does editing, and that's fine. It just is good for you to know that. Understanding how they approach praise, positive feedback, criticism, constructive feedback, which direction do they lean when it comes to that type of thing. Every advisor tends to know what their sort of default is. Some people might be more, you know, they might struggle to come up with positive feedback, whereas other people might have a really hard time with the confrontational sort of aspect of providing constructive criticism. So understanding what your advisor's default is can help you know when you need to ask for more in certain areas. Where are they expecting you to do RA work? You know, do you need to record your hours? All that kind of thing. Has your advisor ever worked with somebody who was experiencing personal setbacks or crisis, and how do they handle that? Those are good things to know so you can know what to expect. What about working in multiple labs? Do they want to be friends on social media? Kind of thing, so you don't have any confusion around that. A lot of people would really strongly say, no, don't be friends with your advisor on Facebook, and other people have always been friends with their advisees on Facebook. So it's really kind of just up to the two of you, but know what you prefer and then, you know, go from there. It's also really important to ask yourself questions about where you're coming from, what your vulnerabilities are. How do you handle criticism? You know, how good are you at advocating for yourself? How do you handle confrontation or the need for confrontation? Those are all really important things to know about yourself, and to compare those answers to what your advisor is telling you about themselves can be really important things to know as you go in, right? So if you're not great at self-advocacy, you might tend to not reach out about something that you need, which can lead to conflict, right? So knowing these things and looking out for them when you come in, really, really helpful. The last page is about handling conflict, because it's inevitable. There will always be tensions and conflicts that come up. I think the most important thing that I can say is that you should always try to, first of all, give yourself some space from the conflict when it's happening. It's okay to, if you're feeling a whole bunch of feelings about something, it is okay to just take a break, come back later. The other thing is to make sure that you address conflicts as they arise, because we're all family and relationships people. We all know that, you know, conflict, or if you have a resentment about something, it will only kind of grow with time. They usually don't go away. And little tiny things, miscommunications, misunderstandings that cause some kind of resentment will build with time and grow and accumulate. And that is not productive for any relationship. So figuring out healthy and effective methods for addressing conflict and miscommunication when it happens is so, so critical. Something that happened really recently with me, I published a paper that I was super excited about, and I mentioned it to my advisor in an email, and she just said something like, yay, lots of good news and bad news, but like didn't say much about it. And the next day I realized that I was like thinking about it still, like, and she really didn't have anything good to say about that. I was like frustrated. So in our next meeting, I was just like, before we talk about anything else, I just want to take a moment. Can we talk about my paper being published? And she was like effusive and so excited and like said all these amazing things that I really needed to hear. And I wouldn't have got that if I didn't ask for it. So knowing what you need and listening to your own sort of feelings about things, and advocating for yourself, really important. Another couple of really important tips here before I close are, of course, you know, don't vent to the people in your office, don't vent online. Um, you know, discretion is really important. You don't want to just kind of be venting your frustrations, you know, in a place where it might get back to people who don't need to hear that, or it could be a temporary frustration that turns into something way bigger than it needed to be. So keep that in mind. And then, of course, you can always seek out mediation and advice from the DGS is a good place to start. And then beyond that, there's more, you know, sort of intense mediation options that you can seek out as well. So went a little bit over time, but thank you all for listening. I hope that this is valuable to you in some way, and I hope you have a great rest of your orientation.